Well, hello again and welcome to our reading of Homer's Iliad Book 1, and we're up to line 440. And we've just left Achilles wandering along the shore, having been deprived of his girl. And the scene now changes back to what's happening with Odysseus and the other girl, and Polymertis, very clever Odysseus, Agon taking her, then Epibormon to the altar. Tithe he puts her into the hands for her dear father, so dative of the possessor here, so he places her in the hands of her dear father, and he addresses Min for out on him. O Chrissy, Lord Agamemnon, Lord of men, sent me pro ahead. Notice that Agamemnon himself doesn't come and give the girl back. That would be beneath him. He sends Odysseus off to do the deed. So he has sent me ahead. Ag-emin, that's an infinitive from ago. That's that other alternative infinitive, to bring the girl to you. So there are two things here, te and te. So both to bring the girl to you and, there's our infinitive here, rexai from resdo is the verb, and that's the verb generally used of sacrifices. So the verb here is resdo. So to sacrifice a sacred hecatomb to Phoebus, huper Danaon, on behalf of the Danans. Offer in order that Hilasomes, that we might propitiate Anacta the Lord, that is Lord Apollo. Who now F-Haken from F-Hiami, who sends against the Achaeans, Polustona grievous cadia cares, literally cares which result in much groaning. This is connected with steno, to groan, so generally translated as grievous, but it's cares which give much misery, much groaning. Hos apone in caesitithe, and thus speaking, he places her in his hands, that is the father's hands. But he, this is the priest, Chiron rejoicing, dexatot, received from Decamai his dear child. Toi dorcatheo hieran hecatombain. But they, Oka quickly, their son, they caused to stand, so perhaps they placed, hexaeis in turn, or in order, the sacred hecatomb for the god. So they did that around the well-built altar. This is from El, and that dum is from that demo root of building. So they placed it around the well-built altar. And Kernipsan top, this is from care a hand and niptomai to wash. So they then wash their hands. They have to be pure and clean for the god. They then wash their hands, and anhelonto is from anhyrio. This is the usual aorist held stem here, aorist middle. So they lifted up the oilokutas. Now these are the barley grains, and these are generally sprinkled between the horns of the victim. And it's said that this practice may be a very old one, before the grinding of corn into grain. So these are just actual whole pieces of barley grains. and unaskone from unecho, holding up their hands, they prayed greatly. So the subject is Chryses, sorry. So Chryses, holding up his hands, he prayed greatly, on their behalf, so for them. Now the prayers normally to a god normally begin with Cluthimu. If you read the various Homeric hymns and things, you'll see this expression very commonly in Greek. Hear me. This is an imperative from kluo. It's an old imperative form, and meu from mu. So hear me, you of the silver bow, you who amphibibarkas, you who prance around. Literally, it's from bino and amphi, so it's often translated as range around Chryses, and very sacred killer, and you who rule, and you rule mightily, Tenedos. Now we get amen, and we're going to get an amet de here as well. It's sort of both an and. So it is both the case that once before you heard me, so the kluo is taking a genitive and there's a participle with it as well. You heard me when I prayed, it's aorist participle. Having shown me respect, having honoured me. Now the verb here is hipsao. This is from iptomai. The verb here, it's a little bit tricky, this one. It's iptomai, to oppress. And this here is the second person aorist singular. So you oppressed the people of the Achaeans greatly, adverb here. So we get the amen and the ade. So both you've done this, and now he says, and also now then, as well, epikraenon is from epikrino. This is an aorist imperative. Fulfill this eldor, this request, this prayer, this desire for me. And now, it's now almost also, and now also ward off, another aorist imperative from amuno. So ward off this ghastly plague for the Danans. And thus he spoke, praying, and Phoebus Apollo Ecluere too heard him. But when they had prayed and pro ballonto, they had, this is middle here, they threw on top, they threw in front the barley grains. Au erusan, this is from au eruo, which means to pull up the heads of the victims. So firstly, they drew up the heads of the victims, kai esfaxan, then they killed them, and then they ederan, they skinned them. Merus tex etamnon, and they cut out the thighs. Now the kata here is a preverb with kalupto, and they covered them over knise with fat. Diptuka poi ersantes, having made a double fold. So it various interpretations of this. It seems as though they put the bones in the middle and they covered it top and bottom with fat, like a sandwich with the bones in the middle. And on top of these, omethatersan, they placed raw flesh. So they placed raw flesh, this is from omos, raw, and tithami, the root from tithami here. So they placed raw flesh on top of them. And that probably is a good place to finish here.